Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're doing a Floowandereeze deck profile. So I'm really excited for you guys because this deck is an amazing deck that just got a crazy awesome new searcher to help out with this deck's consistency, so you can go into some insane boards, like summoning out a copy of your Impin with a barrier statue of Stormwind to completely control the board. So I'm really excited to show you guys this deck, so don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of Notification Squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name scripted for a single video, getting a signed card to mail, and even getting your requested deck profile every single month you're a patron, along with test stands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're playing 2 copies of Impin. Impin is a great boss monster. It has the ability, if this card is tribute summoned, you can add a Floowandereeze spell or trap from your deck to your hand. Then immediately as card resolves, you get to normal summon a monster. And then while this tribute summon card is in the monster zone, your opponent cannot activate the effects of special summon monsters they control in attack position. And then once per battle, during damage calculation, if this card battles an opponent's monster, quick effect, you can banish a card from your hand, and that opponent's monsters has its attack and defense halved, which is a great effect to basically just have a skill drain for monsters that are special summon, a spell and trap search, and it gives you an additional normal summon. This card literally does it all and is a crazy powerful boss monster. We then play a single copy of Ryza the Mega Monarch. This card is a really good 1-of in the deck. I have considered bumping it up to 2, but for right now 1 is totally working for me because this card basically gets cards off the field and out of the graveyard, which is super helpful for this deck. We then play a single copy of Mist Valley Apex Avian. Apex Avian is a good 1-of in the deck because this card has the ability that once per chain, when a card or effect is activated, quick effect, you can target a Mist Valley card you control, which is always going to be itself. Return the target to the hand. If you do, negate the activation. If you destroy it. This deck basically just normal summons out high level winged beast to your side of the field every single turn. So this card is going to be super easy to resummon over and over again in this deck. We then play 3 copies of Floowandereeze Rabina. Rabina is a super good starter for the deck because this card has the ability, if this phase-up card would leave the field, banish it instead, which is all of your Floowandereeze low-level monsters share that ability. And you can only use each of the following effects of this card once per turn, and you can't special summon during the turn you activate either effect, which is a pretty interesting thing because, again, all of your low-level Floowandereeze share that ability. Now, this card's unique effect is if this card is normal summon, you can add a level 4 or lower wing beast from your deck to your hand, which is a really good effect to be able to just add your barrier statue of Stormwind, your copies of Eagland, or any card that you need from your deck to your hand. It also has the ability that then you immediately, as card resolves, normal summon a wing beast monster, which again, all of your low level Floowandereeze share that ability. And if a wing beast monster is normal summoned to your field while this card is banished, you can add this card back to your hand, which all of your low-level Floowandereeze share that ability, which helps out with the deck's consistency to be able to constantly be getting back your copies of your low-level Floowandereeze, so you can just be normal summoning every single turn and getting a search every turn. We then play 3 copies of Floowandereeze Eagland. Eagland has a really neat effect that when this card is normal summon, you can add a level 7 or lower, or level 7 or higher wing beast monster from your deck to your hand, which is a great effect to be able to grab the exact wing beast that you need to your hand off this card's effect, like your copy of your Impin, Ryza, or Mist Valley Apex Avian, where your copy of Rabina grabs all the level 4 or lower ones. We then play 2 copies of Straya. Straya is a really good 2-of. You don't really need a 3rd copy of Straya, but this card has the ability that if this card is normal summon, you can target a card on either player's graveyard and banish it, which is a really good effect to be able to just banish cards that your opponent might need, or get cards out of your graveyard, like your copies of any of your Floowandereeze monsters that might have wound up in the graveyard, so you can add them back to your hand when you normal summon out additional wing beasts. We then play just a single copy of Toucan. Toucan is a good 1-of, but you don't really need any more than 1 copy of this card, because if this card is normal summoned, you can target one of your banished Floowandereeze cards and add it back to your hand, which is a pretty good effect. Now, after any of your low-level Floowandereeze effects resolve, you get to normal summon a card, and if any of them are going to leave the field, you banish them instead, which is a kind of a neat concept for the deck, because then when you normal summon a winged beast, you get to add any of them back to the hand, which is a really cool concept for these cards. We then play a single copy of Barrier Statue of the Stormwind, which locks our opponent and us into special summoning only wind monsters, which is a really cool concept, especially when you establish a copy of Impin plus this card, because we never special summon this deck. You don't even really summon out of the extra deck, except on rare occasion, because you don't really need it, because the deck does it all on its own. We then play 3 copies of Dimensional Shifter. When you activate this card, sometimes it basically just means game over for the opponent, and this deck is basically unaffected by this card, because it has the ability, if you have no cards in your graveyard, quick effect, send this card from your hand to the graveyard until the end of the next turn. Any card sent to the graveyard is banished instead. This card is so good in this deck and helps out your plays a lot. We then play 3 copies of Ash Blossom as well. This card basically says that your opponent can't touch the deck, which is a really good effect. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Terraforming. This card is here because we can get to our crazy powerful field spell. This card is really good in the deck because it's just an additional copy of our field spell. We then play a single copy of Floowandereeze and the Unexplored Winds. This card is just a one-of to me, but it's a really good one-of because it has the ability that you can conduct a tribute summon that requires 2 tributes by sending a monster that you control and a card your opponent controls to the graveyard instead of tributing it. And it is still treated as a tribute summon. Now, the really interesting thing about this card is it says 1 card your opponent controls, not a monster. It also has the ability that during your main phase, you can reveal up to 2 winged beast monsters in your hand and place them on the bottom of your deck in any order, and then draw the same amount of cards that you placed on the bottom of the deck, which helps your hands a little bit if you draw into multiple copies of the same Floowandereeze cards. We then play 3 of the new Searcher, which is just absolutely insane. It's basically like 3 extra copies of Rabina that has the ability that this card has the ability that you banish a winged beast monster from your hand or face it from your field, and you get to add a Floowandereeze monster or a Floowandereeze field spell from your deck to your hand. Then you gain 500 life points, and you can only activate 1 Floowandereeze on the Advent of Adventure per turn. This card is so good, and I'm so glad that this card is finally out. The Floowandereeze in the Advent of Adventure, this card is so good to be able to search your copies of Rabina, and to also bait out your opponent's Ash Blossoms if you're trying to go in for your plays if you already have a Rabina in your hand. We then play 3 copies of the Floowandereeze Map. This card is a really good card, and you can actually search it off your copy of Advent for Adventure. And it has the ability that during the main phase, you can reveal a level 1 Floowandereeze monster in your hand, and you banish a Floowandereeze card with a different name from your deck. Then immediately after this card resolves, you get to normal summon the revealed monster, not counting towards your normal summon for the turn. And if your effect resolves, you can normal summon a Floowandereeze monster, which is a pretty good effect to be able to just immediately activate that ability to be able to grab out the Floowandereeze card that you need. But basically with that ability that if your opponent normal summons a monster, immediately this card resolves, you get to normal summon a Floowandereeze, which is really good because you can normal summon it during your opponent's turn while also being a searcher to be able to banish the Floowandereezes from your deck to get the exact ones that you need. We then play 3 copies of Pot of Duality. Pot of Duality is really good because it lets you reveal the top 3 cards of your deck and add 1 of them to your hand, but you can't special summon the turn you activate this effect, but you never special summon in this deck anyways, so that never really comes up. We then play 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. Pot of Extravagance is a great 3-of in this deck because it basically has the ability that you banish 6 cards from your extra deck to draw 2 cards, but we never special summon from the extra deck anyways, so the extra deck is basically just toolbox. We then play 3 copies of Book of Moon. Book of Moon is a great 3-of because this card basically can flip an opponent's monster face down for a combo piece, but also save us a little bit because you can set your copies of Rabina, Eaglin, Straya, any of your monsters that your opponent is targeting for a card effect, you can flip it face down with the copy of Book of Moon to protect them, which is really good, especially if your opponent Ash Blossoms you can flip them face down with the Book of Moon to get your effects to keep resolving. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing a single copy of the Floowandereeze and the Dreaming Town. This card you're always going to be searching off your copy of Impen, and it has the ability that during the main phase, after this immediately this card resolves, you get to normal summon a level 4 or lower winged beast monster, which is a great effect because you're always going to be summoning out your Rabina and then searching out your barrier statue during your opponent's turn, and then summon out the copy of the barrier statue off the Rabina's effect, which is super good to establish the copy of Impen and a barrier statue because you're going to totally shut down your opponent's board. It also has the ability that you can banish if you tribute summon a level 7 or higher monster while this card is in your graveyard. You can banish this card to change all monsters your opponent controls to face down defense position, which is a pretty good effect to be able to just flip them all face down. We then play 2 copies of Dogmatic Punishment. I wanted to play the 3rd copy of this card, but I ended up just bumping it down to 2 because of the new Searcher, and it has a really good effect that you get to target a monster your opponent controls, and you send a monster from your extra deck to the graveyard that has equal or higher attack than the monster you targeted, and then destroy that card, which this card is really good for the Dogmatic Punishment targets we're actually playing in the deck. But it does lock you out of the extra deck, which is again not that big of a deal because we don't really summon out of the extra deck anyway. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Assembled Nightingale. This is basically just here in the case that we can make a copy of Zeus, and we need to make a copy of Zeus because it can attack your opponent directly, and then you just basically, during the main phase 2, make a copy of Downer Magician on top of it, and then make a copy of Zeus to board wipe the field. It's a really good play to be able to do, but you don't go into it all that often. So if you want to cut any of the cards in the extra deck except for the Dogmatic Punishment targets, you totally can, because if you're trying to go for a more budget list. We then play 3 copies of Elder Entity Nist. You can send this card from your extra deck to the graveyard off your copy of Dogmatic Punishment to basically make a Dogmatic Punishment into a copy of Icarus Attack where you get a double pop, which is pretty good. 1 copy of Wind Pegasus because you manage to carve in the graveyard, target card your opponent controls, and shuffle it into the deck. If you can't destroy it by a card effect, you can shuffle it back with Wind Pegasus, which is pretty good. 1 copy of Cyframe Lord Omega because Omega has the ability that if this card is in the graveyard, you can target one other card in the graveyard and shuffle both that card and this card into the deck to help your copy of D-Shifter be alive again. We then play 2 copies of the Tri-Brigade Baron Blossom just for the copies of Dogmatic Punishment. You sometimes will summon it to your side of the field, but it's very rare that you actually will. And 2 copies of Ominous Omen because it comes up every so often. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really fun deck to play with. I highly recommend that if you guys have not tried Floowandereeze, you definitely should. This deck is going to be a really interesting deck in the coming format because this deck is just so good. Being able to just basically summon out a copy of Impin and skill drain the field while also having a barrier statue to make it so your opponent can't special summon a win, sign me up. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can come part of our notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.